Welcome, everyone. We are so glad that you are joining us, and I would like to welcome our guest for today. Her name is Deborah Koff-Chapin, and Deborah is the originator of touch drawing and the creator of decks Soul Cards 1 and 2 and Portals of Presence, face drawn from the subtle realms. Music has permeated her teaching and ceremonial work since the 1980s and has blossomed into Song Bath Sanctuary. Welcome, Deborah.
Wonderful to be here, Phyllis, and wonderful to be part of the Shift Network family. Yeah.
Well, it's such a pleasure to have you today. And your session name is Sound as a Sacred Portal to the Soul of Life. And I find that really fascinating. Can you tell me a little bit more about that, or our listeners, as to what that means to you, and a little bit about your work?
I think what I'll do is go to right now and maybe go back after, because I've really arrived at sound as a sacred portal most fully in my life through the Song Bath Sanctuary. So I'm in a place now where that has become my most like holy, sacred time. And I feel like I go to a deeper place, and I feel like I am closer to this interface with the subtle realms of life while I'm playing music. It's a sense of being heard. So when I think about creating music, and this happens in many ways in my life now, it's my place of dialogue or presencing Gaia or the nature spirit of where I am. I mean, for instance, I went hiking this week with my husband, and it's a long journey to get up to this beautiful skyline divide on Mount Baker. And when I go hiking now, I take a small Tibetan bowl with me. I put it in my backpack. And I always spend a little time just singing and playing a single bowl out in the mountains. And I feel like that's my time to just come into resonance. And maybe the word resonance is helpful for me. I go into a listening space. That's my way of speaking and inviting the presence of the mountain and the spirit of nature of where I am in that moment. So it can be as simple as a few minutes in the mountain. If I don't have a bowl, I'll just sing, because singing is actually my primary musical instrument. But I have found that very simple ones to play help create a sort of a platform to hold the singing. And if, this is sort of this event, this summit is to inspire people in what they can do in their lives with music, one of the things I can suggest is get one simple instrument that takes no education to be able to play, like a drum or a bowl or, a harmonium. It's just a very simple instrument, even a rattle, and making a sound, a very simple sound. I think it gets us out of our verbal mind and opens up a different space. And just even making that sound without voice, but for me, adding the voice, that's when I come into dialogue with life. Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful, because then you're speaking of utilizing sound actually to access that inner space, but also as well creating an external environment, like changing the atmosphere of that environment. So
Yes.
what I'm curious about then is, before this, how did you actually get into sound healing? What drew you to your first singing bowl or to the utilization of your voice?
It's a long, long journey. And I would say, I sang as a child. I was in choirs. And I have to say that I was thinking about this. That was among my first sacred experiences, was singing in a choir and being part of a larger whole. There's so many aspects to singing that are powerful. And there were moments, we were all different types of high school students from different groups. But when we were singing together, it was a very deeply committed high school choir. When we were singing together some of the sacred music, sometimes we just broke down in tears afterwards. We really had entered this deep space that we didn't comprehend, on verbal terms, but we were in a unified field together, creating this, drawing in this resonant field as we sang. So that would probably be among my early experiences. So the quick journey through, I would say, is two different parts of in my early 20s. One was I went with Hilda Charlton. She was a spiritual teacher in New York City in the Cathedral of St. John the Divine. And we would do a lot of chanting together, Hindu chants or songs. That was wonderful because we were, again, reaching to something more when we sang. That the whole intention of that kind of singing was to reach into the beyond. But I think what was powerful for me was when I was driving to the city, I would do some of those chants, and then I would start changing them. The freedom when I was alone in a car, so I can recommend if you're driving alone, that's a great time to sing and to open your voice. I'm thinking of what pointers can I give people who are listening to get in touch with this. Singing in the car by myself, very simple, repetitive chant. Once I sang it over enough times, it naturally started changing. That's the beginning of improvising, because everything that I actually do is improvised. Then the other experience I had in my 20s was very potent and central and affected, I think, my teaching style, is work with Elizabeth Cogburn in ceremony and ritual. And she worked with the drum, and it's she lived in the Southwest, but her question was, when she went to the ceremonies that were available to see, the Pueblo ceremonies and the Ute Sundance, she said, where are our ceremonies? She didn't try to repeat them, but she took, what can we, in our sort of Western contemporary mind, learn from these ceremonies to create ceremonies that are appropriate to us in this time and the kind of complex social mind that we have and individualized mind that we had. And she developed, and my husband and I were very closely involved for many years as this form of long dance was evolving, and it's become a part of our life to this day in our home community. So when I first went to a long dance with her, the first one, maybe it was in the 70s, maybe 1978, and we were up all night drumming, dancing, singing. I was allowed to really let my voice go, and let my voice go when there were other people there, not just like alone in the car. And I think this primal call, the primal call just came out of my mouth while I was dancing and listening to the drumming. And that's where one of my themes in this is how when we integrate the other art forms, it's not just making sound. That the power when we combine them, because I was moving, and when I was moving, allowing my voice to open and allowing my body to express simultaneously with my voice probably allowed my voice to open more deeply. So those were the early experiences that allowed me to open my voice in that deep and soulful way. And then the next step into creating space for other people and using it for, to create a healing atmosphere. And I didn't have that terminology but in the early 80s when I started giving touch drawing workshops, and maybe I'll do a quick demo in a few minutes of the process, I thought, well, I'm going to be teaching people how to do this drawing process where they draw with their hands. It's very inward. It's like an inward shamanic journey through images. But I didn't have the term shamanic then. I had no terminology. I said, what can I do? I don't want to be invasive, but I want to show people that I'm there for them. I thought, oh, I'll play my drum. I'll sing, because I already had that happening in the ceremonial. And so everyone is at their table and doing drawing, and I had my drum, and I walked around walked around the room, not peering over, not talking to people, but showing them that I was present with my voice and the drum. And that became, over the years, this sacred sound field that creates a container for the visual art process that I teach. And I could not imagine teaching without it. It is completely unified. So the sound work that I do is completely unified with the visual arts practice that I teach. And another piece of it, just to give, because I have it right here, I always open my circles with the chimes, and I got these chimes in 1982. So my instrumentation has evolved and grown over the years. When I got these chimes, I started using them in my workshops, and I don't think I have ever since done a workshop without them. And my feeling is that I'm just going to do one note of each chime, but is that the spirit of touch drawing, here we go again to connect with the subtle realms, the spirit of touch drawing hears it. On some level, it hears this sound and it arrives. And so I call it in, I do a longer meditation, but I'll just play the chimes for just a second here. And I always do, like a prayer and invocation, an invitation to each person to arrive in their soul. And I speak with these chimes in the background. I speak and sing with the chimes. And we go from that busy space of arriving, getting our seats, travel, everything it takes, 3-4 minutes of playing the chimes and, evoking the spirit and inviting people's presence. And then we look around the circle and everyone is there at a much deeper level.
Beautiful. I was thinking a question I'd wanted to ask. And the question, because you were talking about ritual and ceremony, was how you yourself get yourself into that space within the work. And then you just answered that question, that you have created this ritual, this entry point or this portal into the space.
And exactly, it helps me. And I say that to people. Well, I say, well, that helped me to arrive. I hope it helped you arrive as well. Exactly. Yeah.
Well, and you were talking about the integrative aspect with art. And so I know that you're known as a visual artist and you have created these card decks and so forth. So you have these beautiful images. Can you tell us a little bit about how touch drawing actually came to you, how that began, how it originated, and then the creative process, and then we'll kind of dive in a little more as well as to how you pulled that sound in. And I think we touched upon that a little bit in creating the ceremony or the ritual.
Right. I think that is how I brought the sound in to teach this process. But very simply, I don't want to go into full detail. I was in a search in art school in New York City. Image making, human image making had been core to my sort of survival in high school. Then I went to New York Art World and I opened to the whole abstract, contemplative, conceptual art world. I was searching to get back to something. I was searching for something more natural. So there was a search, an underlying search that led up to this moment on the last day of my last year in school. Now, what I'm going to do here is, while I talk, I'm going to let you see, because I think you'll understand better. They have ink in the print shop. I was in the print shop, and a friend asked me to help clean the ink off a sheet of glass. So imagine that this was a sheet of glass with ink on it. I have a paper towel. Right now, I'm putting a piece of tissue paper on it, but it was paper towels the first time. And in that moment, before I wiped with a paper towel, I playfully moved my hands on the paper towel. There's more in detail stories on my website about how, what led to this. But picking up that paper towel and seeing that the images, these organic marks, came directly from my fingertips out onto the paper, it cracked me open, basically. It blew me open. There was something about the, I think, opening energetics of my fingertips and something in the universe that wanted it to happen that I accessed in these moments. I started laughing hysterically, crawling around, picking up more paper towels, doing more little squiggles. They felt like nature. There was that nature that I was trying to get back in touch with. Here was the human hand creating images directly. And I felt suspended in time. I had this awareness of the hands on the cave wall, the handprints on the cave wall, that primal human act of making a mark with our hands. This felt like it was another resonance of the same thing, and that it was for the future. This process was for humans as we evolve into another place, as in our evolution, to create a way of making imprints with our hands that could reflect a more like a higher speed, more fluid transforming consciousness. So I was like laughing hysterically, like I'd flipped out, crawling around on the floor, picking up more paper towels, and at the same time like, oh, this is a profound human process. And it was like this layer of something in the humanity archetype was sort of dropping that awareness into me. And I knew that this wasn't just for me, that it was a process to share, which leads to the teaching. It became a personal practice that really helped me survive at a very unstable time in those few months at that time. Kept me from sort of flipping out, I could always go home and just move my energy. I've got stories on my website where I go more into detail, but that's not the focus today. But that leads to the time of teaching, and that moment that I went back to where I was telling you earlier, where I picked up the drum and I walked around when I was teaching other people to do this process, and I supported them to have that inner experience by playing the drum and singing. So they went hand in hand. The beginning of teaching was absolutely also the beginning of holding sacred space with sound. And it's actually helpful to reflect on it in this setting because I haven't framed it in this way before. So this is actually wonderful for me to be pondering this and putting them together in this way.
Well, it seems like as well that, from the beginnings of your story, that there has been this kind of beautiful wave that's come through as it's begun to grow and evolve and expand into what it is that you are presenting today. And the sound aspect has expanded as well. What do you feel that in this time, not speaking really of future, but what do you feel that in this time is really emerging for you within this work that you are presenting?
I feel like my challenge now is to step more fully into being a portal. So I produced a deck called Portals of Presence. I originally, in 1995, I put out my first deck. That was Soul Cards, the first Soul Cards deck. In 2000, I did Soul Cards 2. Those decks sort of journeyed on their own. I launched them, and I almost felt like they had their own life apart from me. And I just figured that would be the way with the Portals of Presence. But I've done a series of little gatherings with people I'm close with and, spiritual friends, from different lineages as I'm launching this new deck. And I've received, reflected back to me from them, the challenge. You're not separate from this. You be the portal. And help, first of all, to help people have the experience, and also that in my own evolution, to be willing to step more fully into whatever it is that I'm called to, that has a little unknown mystery to it, but to say yes, all right, whatever this is. And I do feel that here was an interesting thing. Pulling this online, I've been doing song baths in my community for a few years. We had COVID, right? It all stopped. I knew that I was coming into a fullness of my soul in really doing the song bath as the next step from doing music in the workshops. So this is the evolution. And here's the image I've had to compare. When I'm playing music in a workshop, I'm creating a vessel to hold everybody. I'm actually trying to disappear, to make music that makes everything disappear, so that it supports them to just go inside themselves. The next step in my own musical evolution, because I think of it as music, because music is healing, it's the natural, the arts are the natural healing mediums, of humanity forever. So creating the song bath, and I decided to call it a song bath rather than a sound bath because it's so vocally based. It's being a fountain rather than a vessel. So when I create it for a workshop, I'm creating a holding circle and I want to disappear. But when I'm doing the song bath, I am opening myself to pour through whatever in the universe wants to come through, more in a feeling of being a fountain. Those are my images. Yeah.
What came to mind as you were talking about that is, yes, you are the portal because you are on the receiving end of all of this and you're creating these images. So I am curious then, as you being the portal for like a higher expressive force, then when you are, does it go the opposite direction as well? I know you receive the images, but when you look at the images, is that then inspiring song and sound within you to be expressed outward?
That is another piece that recently came in that I take as maybe a major possibility of creative challenge. In one of these conversations that I had with some friends, I don't remember who it was who said it, but they thought, I wonder if there's a song for each of the portals in the deck, which would mean 72 different songs. And right now I don't think in terms of words. I resist words, but this is where I just need it is a new thing on the horizon, a new possibility on the horizon.
Mm-hmm.
And the beginning of it is like taking the cards out with me and relating to them myself, because I do these drawings and I don't really, the doing of it is how I relate. So it's also that cycling back to take them in myself and to enliven them in my own psyche. For instance, when I went into the mountains, again on this hike, so I'm trying to get out once a week if I can, I also brought some of my Portals of Presence deck with me, some of the faces, and I chose one that seemed to want to come out in the moment, and I just played with it in the environment and a video, and how it related to the environment in a video. And so I was bringing it more fully into presence that way as well. So all of these ways to open to receive the images that have come through me, you're onto it. It's an insightful question because part of me resists that. And I think it is time. And that resistance is often a sign of a new opening, that I'm in process of right now.
Yeah, because from your original two decks and then this new one that's come out, it seems to me that there's quite a departure.
Well,
Because now it's like the images
right,
of
so
the
I'll just
faces.
hold this up so
Yeah.
you can see.
It's like all of the faces that you've brought through. So when I've looked through those images, I was asking that question in regard to the sounds that come forward, or
Yeah.
that are inspired because they seem to speak to me in that way. So what you're saying, that's really very, very exciting.
And that is what I ask. So it's not new work. So it's not a
Right.
departure in my artwork because this body of work has been building all through the years. That first time I did touch drawing in the print shop where they were little squiggles, the next thing I did were little faces. That was the beginning of faces. I think this may be the moment to just draw a face, and I will just answer your question while I'm doing it. So you can see here, this is this is the paint, and I have rolled it smooth. You saw me do a very primal, childlike first touch drawing. So this is all, the paint's already on, so I wasn't going to take the time doing that during this presentation. So the faces, all through the years, while I have been doing all of these varied images, I have also been drawing faces. There, I want to make sure you can really see this. There we go. And so with two hands, I go into my inner sensations. This has been a core meditation of touch drawing. All through the years, from the first time I did it, and they were like child scrawls, through now, and all the years of doing the soul card type images, I've also done faces. And I feel into my own inner face and sense the energetics. So what I'm doing here, as you can see, I'm working on a thin paper so you can actually see it. The ones in my deck were a little bit heavier paper. This is a slight difference, but this is the paper I use in my workshops. And so as I feel sensations in my own face, this is my instrument of attunement, is the somatic sensations in my body. And so this being is starting to take form on the paper. And all of the faces in the Portals of Presence deck were created exactly in this manner. And many of them were created on the kind of journeys that I talked about into the mountains. They were created in Chartres Cathedral, Roslyn Chapel, under ancient yew trees. I have always taken my music and my drawing out into kind of my journeys, my sacred journeys, because they are my way of attuning. So I am talking as I'm doing this, and now I will show you this being that came. Well, I'm just going to pick it up so you can see it a little bit better.
Beautiful.
And so each of the faces in the Portals of Presence deck were done just like this, but I selected from hundreds or thousands, created over at least 20 years. So some of them were created in the time that the soul cards were done, but this was a harvest of another stream of my work, of another focus. I've known for many years, since the early 2000s, that this deck was in potential. But I think this was finally the time, the right time for this. And yes, what I do in the deck is I invite people to take them in deeply, to give voice to them, to potentially sing or make the sounds or write or move, to allow these beings to come alive in creative, dynamic relationship. That is the practice of this deck. And the other thing included in the deck, which I don't know if you realize, is I created 2 audio experiences that people can download from the website, where I did music and I took some of the instructions and I guide people into gazing deeply at a single face and to go into a creative process with it, and also to create a circle of these faces and step into the center of the circle. So I play music so people have this holding vessel of sound while they experience these faces. So again, I'm weaving very integrally the sound even into this deck.
Well, thank you so much for that lovely demonstration, because I think now is actually a really wonderful time for you to share
Yeah.
an experience for us.
Yeah.
And I know that you're going to be doing a brief little song bath, and you're going to be showing images.
Yes.
So now is a perfect time to do that, and then
I think it is.
kind of delve into that a little bit deeper.
What I would like everyone to do when the first image comes on is just gaze at it. It's not a face, it's the card back. Just gaze at it, empty your mind and gaze. And then just let these images flow through you, take in the sound, relax. They're going to be moving. If you need to close your eyes for part of it, you're welcome to just take in the sound. So interact naturally. I will be doing a song bath along with the images.
Wow, Deborah, that was so beautiful and transcendent because when I was actually with the ability to see those images, it was as if the music that you were making, the vocals that were coming from you, it was as if those faces were speaking to me, and I'm sure that our listeners experienced much the same thing. So I think that's a beautiful place to kind of leave people. So I'd like to know if you have, is there anything that you would like to share with our listeners in regards to upcoming classes or workshops or the song baths that you may be
Sure.
having here in the future?
I actually give the song baths most Sunday evenings. Um, and if anyone's interested, it's no cost. There's a place to donate to an organization that I'm connected with if people would like to, but that's just free will. I offer this as my gift on most Sunday evenings. And if you go to the website, there's a way to sign up, and then I create a little announcement with a photograph I've taken and an image for the week, and I send it with a reminder when it's happening on Sunday nights. And I have a schedule of online workshops also on my website. So the main thing is touchdrawing.com. If you're interested in the process, lots of information, videos, and stories about touch drawing. The Portals of Presence deck and the soul cards are there, and it's all in that one place, touchdrawing.com.
Beautiful. And then do you have just a tidbit of wisdom that you would like to leave our listeners with today?
Yes, I think I'll go back to what I began with, which is simple. To begin working with sound yourself, do something very simple. It can be as simple as a breath, and I incorporate this into my workshops too, just letting a sigh, an audible sigh out where you feel the vibration in your chest, and then gradually letting that turn into a note. Just begin with the simple things of letting your voice out. A very simple instrument like a drum or chime, simple one thing, and allowing your voice to play on top of that. So those are the ways I think to begin to open, especially the power of opening your voice, which I think is a birthright for all of us.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing with us today, Deborah. And thank you all for listening and being a part of this wonderful session.
Just wonderful to be talking with you, Phyllis, and be part of this summit. Thank you.
Thank you.